Listen and do not rush past this moment, because something inside you already paused when you saw this title. Something within you hesitated. Something within you whispered, "Wait, what if this is for me?" And that whisper, that quiet, almost unnoticeable pull, is not random. It is not your imagination. It is not coincidence. It is the very reason you are here right now. This is not just another message scrolling across your screen. This is not entertainment. This is not noise. This is interruption. A divine interruption. There are thousands of things you could be doing right now. Thousands of videos, posts, distractions, conversations. And yet, somehow out of all of them, this found you. Or rather, you were led to it. Because heaven does not shout over chaos. It interrupts it. And right now, your routine, your scrolling, your distraction has just been interrupted for a reason. Think about the past few days. The strange feeling you couldn't explain. The moments where everything felt slightly off. The times your mind wandered into thoughts you didn't expect. The heaviness that came and went without warning. The sense that something is shifting, but you couldn't quite define it. That wasn't random. That was preparation. Because before God sends a warning, He sends a feeling. Before He speaks loudly, He whispers gently. And if you're honest with yourself, you've felt it. You've sensed something building, something forming, something approaching that you couldn't fully understand. You tried to ignore it. You tried to distract yourself. You told yourself, it's nothing. But deep down you knew it was nothing. And now here you are. Not by accident, not by chance, but by divine alignment. There are moments in life when time itself seems to slow down, when everything pauses just long enough for truth to reach you. This is one of those moments. And what makes it even more serious is that it doesn't happen often. This is not a casual message. This is a timed message. A message tied to a moment that has already been marked, not by human calendars, but by divine timing. And that's why the urgency feels real. That's why your heart is beating a little differently right now. That's why you feel both curiosity and a strange sense of pressure. Because your spirit recognizes what your mind is still trying to process. Something is trying to reach you before it's too late. And here's the truth most people won't admit. You almost skipped this. You almost kept scrolling. You almost missed this moment completely. But you didn't. And that alone should tell you something. Because when God is trying to reach you, He doesn't rely on chance. He creates alignment. He moves things. He shifts attention. He places something directly in your path at the exact moment you need it. And that's exactly what just happened. Right now, you are standing at the edge of awareness. On one side is distraction. On the other side is revelation. Most people never realize when they are standing in this place. They walk away. They scroll past. They ignore the nudge. What you did. And that's why this matters more than you think. Because this isn't just about hearing a message. This is about responding to it. There is something unfolding. Something that has your name connected to it. Something that has already begun moving in ways you cannot yet see. And this message is your first alert. Your first signal. Your first chance to understand what is coming. But understand this clearly. Not everyone gets warned. Not everyone gets this moment. Not everyone gets this opportunity to pause before impact. And the fact that you do right now means you are being given a chance. A chance to prepare. A chance to see. A chance to avoid what others will walk into blindly. But that chance only matters if you stay. If you listen. if you don't treat this like just another passing moment. Because this is where everything begins. This is the interruption that changes direction. This is the moment that separates those who ignore from those who awaken. And right now you are being called to awaken. So don't look away. Don't rush this. Don't tell yourself later. Because what you're about to hear next will explain everything you've been feeling, and everything that's about to happen. Type "I am listening" in the comments if you feel this message reaching you. Blessing Code 2026 is now activated around your life. There is something you need to admit to yourself right now, and it may not be easy to hear. This is not the first time you've been warned. This is not the first time something tried to get your attention. This is not the first time you felt that quiet nudge, that sudden pause, that unexplainable hesitation in your spirit. No, this had been happening for a while now. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss, easy to ignore, but consistent, repeating, persisted. Because when God speaks, He doesn't always begin with thunder. He begins with whispers, and those whispers have already been surrounding you. Think back, not too far, just recently. Moments where you felt like you should not go somewhere, but you went anyway. Times when something inside you said, "Wait, this doesn't feel right," but you pushed past it. Conversations where your spirit felt uneasy, yet you stayed silent. Decisions that didn't sit well with you, yet you convinced yourself to move forward. That wasn't overthinking. That was instruction. That was divine direction trying to guide you before you reached a point you could not easily return from. But here's what happens so often, and this is where most people miss it. The voice of God is not loud like the world. It does not compete with noise. It does not force itself on you. It does not demand attention. Instead, it invites awareness. And if you're constantly distracted, constantly scrolling, constantly filling your mind with noise, that invitation becomes easier to ignore. Not because it isn't there, but because you stopped listening. There were signs. You know there were. Small ones at first. Repeating thoughts that didn't feel like your own. Dreams that felt too real to be random. Moments where you subtly felt pulled away from certain people, certain environments, certain choices, but you couldn't explain why. That was not coincidence. That was communication. Because before God allows something to happen, He gives you a chance to recognize it. And you were given that chance more than once. But each time life continued. The routine resumed. The distractions returned. And slowly, that voice became quieter in your awareness, not because it stopped speaking, but because you became less sensitive to it. This is where things begin to shift. Because when whispers are ignored, they don't disappear. They intensify. They move from gentle nudges to stronger feelings. From quiet thoughts to undeniable discomfort. From subtle signs to clear warnings. And if those are still ignored, then comes interruption. That is where you are now. This moment right here is not the beginning. It is the escalation. It is what happens when everything else has already been tried. When the gentle guidance was not enough. When the quiet direction was overlooked. When the internal voice was pushed aside too many times. Now, the message has to reach you in a way you cannot ignore. That's why it feels different. That's why it feels urgent. That's why something inside you is paying attention now in a way it didn't before. Because deep down, you recognize this pattern. You recognize that this is not random. You recognize that this is connected to everything you've been sensing, everything you've been feeling, everything you've been trying to brush off. And here's the truth you cannot avoid anymore. You knew something was off. You felt it before it became clear. You sensed it before it became obvious. But you kept moving anyway. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't fully understand. And now, understanding is being forced into your awareness. Because there comes a point where ignoring the voice is no longer harmless. There comes a point where silence becomes risk. There comes a point where delay becomes dangerous. And this is that point. The voice you've been ignoring was never trying to control you. It was trying to protect you. It was trying to position you. It was trying to redirect you before something aligned in a way that would affect you more deeply than you realize. But protection only works if it is received. Direction only works if it is followed. And warning only works if it is taken seriously. Right now, you are being brought back into alignment with that voice. Not gently this time, but clearly, directly, unavoidably. Because what is ahead requires you awareness. It requires you to stop dismissing what you feel. It requires you to trust what has been trying to guide you all along. No more second guessing. No more brushing it off. No more telling yourself it's nothing. Because it was never nothing. It was always something. And now, it is becoming everything. So listen carefully. Because what comes next will reveal why those warnings were given and what they were trying to keep you from. Type "I hear the warning" in the comments if you are ready to stop ignoring what God has been showing you. Blessing code 3030 is now activated around your path. There is a reason that specific dates begin to feel heavy in your spirit, and August 17th is one of those dates. You may look at it on a calendar and think it is just another day, just another number, just another moment in time that will come and go like all the others. But what you are about to understand is this: not all days carry the same weight. Not all moments are equal. Some are ordinary and some are appointed. And August 17th hath been appointed. Long before you ever became aware of it, long before you ever read these words, this date was already marked. Not by human planning, not by coincidence, but by divine timing. There are moments when heaven aligns events, decisions, people, and outcomes in ways that cannot be seen in advance. And when those moments approach, something begins to shift in the unseen first before it ever becomes visible in your life. That is exactly what is happening now. The reason this date feels urgent is because it is not just about what will happen on that day, it is about what is already beginning to move toward it. You are not waiting for August 17th. August 17th is already moving toward you. And everything leading up to it is preparation. There are conversations forming. There are decisions aligning. There are circumstances being set into motion. And if you are not aware, if you are not alert, if you are not listening, you will walk into that day reacting instead of being ready. That is the difference this message is trying to create. Because here is what most people never realize. When God assigns a moment, He also releases a warning beforehand. Not to scare you, not to control you, but to position you. To give you the advantage of awareness before the moment arrives. And that is what August 17th represents for you. It is not random. It is not meaningless. It is a turning point. A moment where something shifts, either in your favor or against your preparation. That is why your spirit has been unsettled. That is why things have felt slightly off. That is why certain situations have not been flowing the way you expected. Because alignment is being adjusted. Because things that do not belong are being exposed. Because paths are being redirected, even when it feels uncomfortable. This is not disruption without purpose. This is preparation with urgency. You must understand this clearly. August 17th is not the danger. Unawareness is. Because what happens on that day will not surprise those who are prepared. It will only overwhelm those who ignored the signs leading up to it. And right now, you are being given those signs in advance. You are being told, before it happens, that something requires your attention. Something requires your discernment. Something requires you to slow down, to observe, to listen more carefully than you have been. Because what may look normal on the surface will not be normal beneath it. And if you move blindly, if you move emotionally, if you move without awareness, you could step directly into something that was never meant for you. That is why this message carries weight. Because it is not vague. It is not general. It is specific. A specific date. A specific moment. A specific warning. And the more you try to dismiss it, the more you will feel it pressing on your awareness. Because your spirit already recognizes that this matters. You don't need to understand every detail yet. You don't need to see the full picture right now. But you do need to acknowledge that something is being revealed to you ahead of time, and that alone changes everything. Because once you are aware, you are responsible for how you respond. You can no longer say you didn't feel it. You can no longer say you didn't sense it. You can no longer say you didn't know something was coming. Now you do. And that awareness is your protection if you choose to use it. So as this state approaches, everything you do matters more. Every decision carries more weight. Every interaction, every response, every step you take begins to align with what is coming. This is not about fear. This is about readiness. This is about walking into that day with clarity instead of confusion, with discernment instead of distraction, with awareness instead of regret. Because August 17th will arrive whether you prepare or not. But how it affects you will depend on what you do now. Type "I am prepared" in the comments if you are choosing awareness over ignorance. Blessing code 817 is now activated around your timeline. As this revelation settles into your spirit, understand this: what you are receiving right now is not just information. It is like being released into darkness. Every message like this becomes a seed planted in someone's soul, a warning that redirects a life, a spark that awakens someone who was about to miss their moment. The word declares that when you sow into good ground, your harvest will overflow, and right now, you are standing in that moment of decision. If this message has reached you, then you are not just a listener, you are part of the mission. I feel led to say this clearly: your action today can help carry this light to someone who is still in the dark, someone who needs this exact warning before their own moment arrives. The PayPal link is waiting for you in the description, and even the QR code placed on your screen is not there by accident. This is your opportunity to turn revelation into impact. As you give, heaven records it as obedience, not obligation, and what you release will return to you multiplied in ways you cannot yet see. Step into this moment. Act now. There is something you must understand right now, and it is not meant to frighten you, but it is meant to wake you. Delay is not harmless. It feels harmless. It feels small. It feels like something you can always come back to later. You tell yourself, "I'll think about it tomorrow," or "I'll deal with it when the time is right," or "It's probably not that serious." And in that moment, nothing dramatic happens. Nothing visibly breaks. Nothing immediately collapses. But what you don't see is what begins to shift quietly beneath the surface. Because delay does not stop time. Delay does not pause what is coming. Delay only removes your preparation from the moment that is already moving toward you. And this is where the danger begins. You are not being warned because something might happen someday. You are being warned because something is already in motion. Something is already aligning. Something is already forming in ways that you cannot yet fully see. And the only thing that determines how it affects you is whether you are ready when it arrives. This is why ignoring this moment carries weight. Because ignoring does not cancel what is coming. It only removes your awareness of it. And when awareness is removed, reaction takes its place. Think about that carefully. When you are aware, you move with intention. You observe. You discern. You choose your steps carefully. But when you are unaware, you react. You weigh. You respond emotionally. You make decisions based on pressure instead of clarity. And that is exactly where mistakes are made. Not because you are incapable, but because you were unprepared. This is the pattern that repeats in so many lives. People do not fail because they were weak. They failed because they were not ready when the moment required them to be strong. They were not paying attention when the warning came. They dismissed the feeling. They ignored the signal. They assumed they had more time. And then suddenly everything changed. The opportunity passed. The situation escalated. The consequence arrived. And they found themselves saying the same words over and over again. I knew something felt off. That is the cost of delay. Not immediate destruction, but delayed realization. And delayed realization is one of the hardest things to carry, because it comes with clarity after the moment has already passed. This is why this message is not asking you to panic. It is asking you to pay attention. Because there is a difference between fear and awareness. Fear paralyzes you. Awareness prepares you. And right now, you are being invited into awareness before something reaches you that requires it. But if you choose to ignore this, if you treat this like something optional, something you can revisit later, something that does not require your full attention right now, then you are choosing delay. And delay has consequences, not because you are being punished, but because you are stepping out of alignment with the timing that was meant to protect you. Timing matters more than most people realize. The same decision made at the wrong time can lead to the wrong outcome. The same conversation at the wrong moment can create the wrong reaction. The same step taken without awareness can place you in a situation that could have been avoided entirely. This is why you are being called to slow down, to observe, to listen, to take this seriously before the moment arrives. Because once it arrives, everything moves faster. Choices must be made quickly. Reactions happen instantly. And there is less space to think, less time to discern, less opportunity to step back. Preparation happens now or not at all. And this is the part you must not ignore. You have already felt the warning. You have already sensed the shift. You have already noticed that something is different. So if you walk forward pretending everything is normal, that is not innocence. That is avoidance. And avoidance does not protect you. It exposes you. Right now, you are being given something powerful, the ability to prepare before the moment demands it. The ability to adjust before something locks into place. The ability to step differently before the path becomes harder to change. But that ability only works if you use it. If you stay aware. If you stay present. If you refuse to delay what is clearly being brought into your attention right now. Because what is coming does not need to harm you. It only becomes a problem if you walk into it without awareness. And that choice is still in your hands. Type "I choose awareness" in the comments if you are ready to move with clarity instead of delay. Lesson code 4040 is now surrounding your decisions. There is a reason why everything has felt heavier than usual lately, and it is not just in your head. Something is happening around you right now that you cannot fully see, but you can feel it. The tension that appears without cause. The sudden shifts in people's behavior. The way certain situations seem to become complicated for no clear reason. The moments where your energy drops, your focus scatters, and your peace feels interrupted. This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is pressure, and pressure does not appear without purpose. There is a battle forming around your life in this moment, and it is not always loud. In fact, the most impactful battles are often the quiet ones, the ones that do not announce themselves, the ones that move subtly, influencing your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and your direction without you even realizing it at first. This is why it feels confusing, because nothing looks obviously wrong yet everything feels slightly off. You may have noticed how certain conversations drain you more than they used to, how certain people feel different even if they have not changed their words, how your patience has been tested in ways that seem small but constant, how distractions have increased right when you needed clarity the most. That is not accidental. That is strategic. Because when something important is approaching your life, there is always resistance before it arrives. Not always visible resistance, not always dramatic opposition, but subtle interference designed to pull your attention away from what truly matters. And right now, your attention is being targeted. Think about how easy it has been to lose focus recently. How quickly your mind shifts from one thought to another. How difficult it hath been to stay centered, to stay grounded, to stay clear in your decisions. That is not weakness. That is interference. Because if your focus can be scattered, your awareness can be lowered. And if your awareness is lowered, your ability to discern what is happening around you becomes limited. That is where mistakes begin. Not because you do not know better, but because you were distracted at the wrong moment. This is why this section matters so much. Because you are not just preparing for a future moment, you are navigating a present environment that is already shifting around you. There are things happening behind the scenes that you cannot see yet. Conversations you are not part of. Decisions being made that may eventually affect you. Energy shifting in ways that will soon become visible. And all of it is building toward something that requires your awareness. This is the nature of spiritual and emotional pressure. It does not announce itself clearly. It surrounds you gradually. It creates confusion before it creates consequence. And if you are not paying attention, you will mistake it for normal life. But this is not normal. This is a buildup of moments, interactions, and decisions that are aligning toward something that will require you to respond correctly. And that is where the battle truly exists. Not in what is happening around you, but in how you respond to it. Because every moment right now is testing something within you. Your patience, your awareness, your ability to pause instead of react, your ability to observe instead of assume, your ability to step back instead of stepping in too quickly. These are not small things. These are the exact things that determine whether you move through what is coming with clarity or get caught in it with confusion. And this is where many people fall short. They focus on what is happening externally without realizing that the real battle is internal. It is in your thoughts. It is in your reactions. It is in the way you process what is happening around you. Because if that can be influenced, then your decisions can be influenced. And if your decisions are influenced, then your direction can be altered. This is why you must stay grounded now more than ever. Not in fear, not in overthinking, but in awareness. You must begin to notice what you normally overlook. The tone of conversations, the timing of events, the way certain things suddenly appear when you least expect them. Because patterns are forming, and those patterns are not meaningless. They are leading somewhere. And if you recognize them early, you can move differently. You can choose differently. You can avoid stepping into something that was never meant for you. But if you ignore them, if you brush them off, if you convince yourself that everything is just random, and normal, then you are lowering your awareness at the exact moment it needs to be highest. And that is when the battle is lost, not by force but by an attention. Right now, you are being given the chance to stay alert, to stay focused, to stay aware of what is happening both around you and within you. Because this moment is not just preparation for what is coming. It is part of what is coming. The battle is already here, not to harm you but to test whether you are ready. And how you move right now will determine how you move when everything becomes clear. Type I stay alert in the comments if you are choosing awareness in this moment. Lesson code 5050 is now strengthening your focus and clarity. There is something forming ahead of you, and it is not as obvious as you might expect. Because if it were obvious, you would avoid it immediately. If it were clear, you would recognize it without hesitation. If it were direct, it would not require this level of warning. But this is not that kind of situation. This is subtle. This is disguise. This is the kind of trap that looks normal on the surface but carries consequences underneath. And that is why discernment matters right now more than anything else. You are not being prepared to fight something visible. You are being prepared to recognize something hidden. Something that will not announce itself as a problem. Something that may even appear as an opportunity, a conversation, a decision, or a moment that seems harmless at first glance. That is how traps work. They do not force you. They invite you. They present themselves in a way that feels familiar, comfortable, even reasonable. They give you just enough comfort to lower your guard, just enough normality to make you question your own instincts. And that is where the danger lies. Because the moment you begin to ignore what you feel is the moment you begin to step into what you cannot yet see. Think carefully about this. Have you noticed something recently that didn't fully sit right with you but you couldn't explain why? A situation that seemed fine logically, but felt off internally. A person whose words made sense but whose presence felt different. A decision that looked good on the outside, but created hesitation within you. That is the beginning of discernment. And most people override it. They tell themselves they are overthinking. They tell themselves they are being too sensitive. They convince themselves to follow logic over instinct, appearance over awareness. And that is exactly how traps succeed. Because they rely on you dismissing your internal warning system. Right now, something is aligning in your environment that will require you to trust what you feel more than what you see. Because what you see may not reveal the full picture. What you hear may not reflect the full truth. What is presented to you may not carry the intention it appears to have. This is why you must slow down. Because speed is the ally of traps. When you rush, you do not observe. When you react quickly, you do not discern. When you move without pause, you do not notice the details that would have protected you. And right now, details matter. The way someone approaches you, the timing of what is said, the sudden appearance of an option or opportunity, the pressure to respond quickly instead of thoughtfully. These are not small things. These are indicators. Indicators that something may not be as simple as it appears. And this is where your responsibility comes in. Because you are not being warned to become fearful. You are being warned to become aware. There is a difference. Fear makes you retreat from everything. Awareness allows you to move wisely through anything. And what is ahead requires wisdom. Because the trap that is being set is not necessarily meant to harm you directly, it is meant to mislead you. To shift your direction slightly. To influence a decision that leads to another decision. And another. Until you find yourself in a place you never intended to be. And by the time it becomes clear, it feels too late to easily step back. That is why this moment matters. because you are being given the ability to recognize it before it fully forms, to notice the inconsistency before it becomes a consequence, to question the situation before it becomes a commitment. And this is what discernment truly is. Not judgment, not suspicion, but awareness of what does not align even when everything appears acceptable. You must begin to trust that. You must begin to listen to that inner hesitation. You must begin to pause when something feels rushed, pressured, or slightly off. Because those small moments of pause are what separate clarity from confusion. And right now, you are standing at a point where one decision could shift more than you realize. Not dramatically at first, but gradually, quietly, in ways that only become clear later. That is why this warning is here now, so that later does not become regret, so that confusion does not replace clarity, so that you do not look back and realize you felt it but ignored it. Because this time, you are not being left unaware. This time, you are being shown in advance. And what you do with that awareness will determine everything that follows. Type "I trust my discernment" in the comments if you are ready to move with awareness instead of assumption. Blessing code 6060 is now sharpening your spiritual clarity. There is a reason why this message reached you and not someone else. You may think it is because you happen to be in the right place at the right time. You may tell yourself it is random, that anyone could have seen this, that it does not necessarily mean anything about you specifically. But deep down, something in you knows that explanation does not feel complete. Because it is not complete. You were not just present. You were positioned. Here is the difference between seeing something and being meant to receive it. Many people scroll past warnings. Many people encounter moments like this and dismiss them without a second thought. Many people feel the nudge and ignore it entirely. What you didn't. And that is not something to overlook. Because the ability to recognize a moment like this is not common. It requires sensitivity. It requires awareness. It requires a certain level of openness that not everyone carries. And that is exactly why you were chosen to receive this. Not because you are perfect. Not because you have everything figured out. But because you are responsive. Because even when you doubt yourself, even when you question what you feel, even when you hesitate, you still listen just enough to pause. And that pause is what brought you here. You must understand something very clearly now. Being chosen does not mean you are being singled out for something negative. It means you are being trusted with awareness before others. It means you are being given insight ahead of time. It means you are being placed in a position where your response matters more than usual. And that comes with responsibility. Because once you are aware, you cannot return to being unaware. Once something hath been shown to you, you cannot pretend you did not see it. Once a warning has reached you, you cannot act as if you were never given the chance to prepare. That is the weight of being chosen in this moment. You are not just receiving a message. You are being placed in a role where your awareness can influence what happens next, a role where your decisions carry more impact than you realize, a role where your ability to stay grounded, focused, and discerning becomes essential. Because you are not just navigating this for yourself, you are influencing the outcome of what is unfolding around you, whether you realize it or not. There are moments in life when one person's awareness shifts everything. One person's decision changes the direction of an entire situation. One person's ability to pause instead of react prevents something from escalating further. And right now, you are that person. You are the one who has been given the signal early. You are the one who hath been given the chance to step differently. You are the one who has the ability to recognize what others might miss. But that ability only matters if you accept it. Because you can still choose to ignore this. You can still choose to treat this as something temporary. You can still choose to return to your normal patterns, your normal thinking, your normal way of moving through situations. But if you do that, then the advantage you were given disappears. Not because it was taken away, but because it was not used. This is what separates those who move through situations with clarity from those who get caught in them with confusion. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is awareness and the willingness to act on it. And right now, you have that awareness. You have been given a moment to step outside of your usual patterns, to observe more closely, to think more carefully, to respond more intentionally. Because what is coming requires that level of presence. It requires you to trust what you feel. It requires you to recognize when something does not align. It requires you to stay grounded even when things around you begin to shift. This is not about pressure. This is about purpose. You were not chosen to be overwhelmed. You were chosen to be aware, to see what others overlook, to notice what others dismiss, to respond differently when it matters most. And this is the moment where that role begins to take shape. Because everything you have felt, everything you have sensed, everything that has been building within you has been preparing you for this exact point. A point where your awareness is no longer optional. It is necessary. A point where your choices are no longer casual. They are impactful. A point where your role is no longer passive. It is active. And what you do next will reflect whether you fully step into that role or step away from it. Because being chosen is not about recognition. It is about response. And right now, your response is what matters most. Type "I accept my role" in the comments if you are ready to move with purpose and awareness. Blessing code 7070 is now activating your spiritual responsibility. There is a reason a specific time has been placed in front of you, and it is not just to create pressure. It is to create precision. Because when a moment is defined, it carries weight. When a boundary is set, it demands attention. And when a time is given so clearly, it means something is tied to it that cannot be delayed without consequence. 11:59 p.m. is not just a time on a clock. It is a threshold, a line between preparation and reaction, a dividing point between those who acted when they were warned and those who waited until it was too late to adjust. You must understand this deeply now. Timing is not something you control. You can control your actions. You can control your awareness. You can control your response. But you cannot control when a moment arrives. And right now, a moment is approaching that will not wait for you to feel ready. This is why obedience matters. Not blind obedience. Not forced obedience. But conscious, aware, intentional alignment with what you have already been shown. Because everything you have heard so far is leading to this point. A point where knowing is no longer enough. And now, you must act differently. And now, you must move differently. And now, you must carry yourself with a level of awareness that reflects what you have been given. Because if you return to your usual patterns, if you fall back into distraction, if you treat this as something temporary, then you are stepping away from alignment at the exact moment you need it most. And that is where timing becomes critical. Because once the clock passes that threshold, everything that was preparing begins to unfold. And unfolding does not pause for hesitation. This is why you may feel a sense of urgency building within you right now. Not panic, but pressure. Not fear, but awareness that something requires your full attention before a certain point. That feeling is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to focus you. Because focus determines how you move. And how you move determines what you step into. Right now, you are being given a window. A limited space of time where you can observe more clearly, think more deeply, and adjust more intentionally. A space where you can recognize what does not align, where you can step back from what feels forced, where you can pause instead of rushing into decisions that may carry weight beyond the moment. But that window is not permanent. It closes, not because you are being punished, but because moments naturally move forward. And once they move forward, you are either aligned with them or reacting to them. This is why obedience is being emphasized, because obedience in this context is not about control. It is about alignment. It is about choosing to stay aware, to stay grounded, to stay present in a way that allows you to move with clarity instead of confusion. It is about recognizing when something feels off and not ignoring it. It is about refusing to rush when something requires thought. It is about stepping back when something feels pressured. These are not small actions. These are the exact actions that protect you. And the timing of those actions is what makes the difference. Because the same awareness used too late does not carry the same power as awareness used at the right moment. That is why this deadline exists. Not to scare you, but to anchor your attention. To make you realize that this is not something to postpone. This is something to engage with now. Fully. Clearly. Without distraction. Because once that moment passes, everything that has been building begins to show itself more clearly. Situations become more defined. Decisions become more immediate. And the space to pause becomes smaller. That is why you are being asked to prepare before that point, to align before that point, to become aware before that point. Because after that everything moves faster. And this is where many people realize too late that they had the chance to slow down earlier but chose not to. You are not in that position right now. You still have the space. You still have the awareness. You still have the opportunity to move with intention instead of reaction. But that opportunity is tied to time. And time does not repeat the same moment twice. So what you do before that threshold matters. How you think, how you respond, how you observe, how you choose, all of it begins to shape what unfolds next. This is not about fear. This is about readiness. And readiness is a choice. One that must be made before the moment arrives, not after. Type "I move in alignment" in the comments if you are choosing to act before the moment passes. Blessing code 1159 is now aligning your timing with clarity. As you feel the weight of this moment, understand that this is not just a message for you alone. It is a living stream meant to reach every soul standing at their own critical threshold. The word declares that when light is released, darkness cannot remain. And right now, you are witnessing that light being poured out in real time. I feel led to say this clearly. When you step forward in support, you are not giving to a channel, you are sowing into a river that carries truth to those who are about to miss their moment. The PayPal link placed in the description and the QR code on your screen are not there by chance. They are your doorway to participate in something greater than yourself. As you give, you activate a flow, and heaven responds to that obedience with multiplied return. Because what you release in faith never leaves your life without increase. This is your moment to act, not later, not eventually, but now. Step into alignment, sow into the mission, and watch what begins to open over your life. There is something you need to understand at a deeper level now. This warning is not random, and it is not unnecessary. It is protective. Because behind every true warning, there is something specific it is trying to keep you from. Not something vague, not something general, but something real, something forming, something that has the potential to affect your direction in ways you may not immediately recognize. And right now, you are not being warned about something small. You are being protected from something that could shift your path, not permanently but significantly. Because sometimes the greatest disruptions in life do not come from massive, obvious events. They come from small, seemingly normal moments that lead you into the wrong alignment. A conversation that influences your thinking. A decision that redirects your attention. A situation that pulls you into something you were never meant to carry. And once you are inside it, it becomes harder to step out. That is what protection is trying to prevent. Not just the outcome, but the entry point. Because if you never step into it, you never have to fight your way out of it. Think about how many times in your life something felt small at the beginning but later became something much larger than you expected. A situation that seemed manageable at first, but slowly grew into something draining, confusing, or difficult to undo. That is how misalignment works. It does not begin with intensity. It begins with subtlety. And that is exactly why you are being warned now before subtle becomes significant. There is something ahead that may look harmless. It may even feel familiar. It may carry a sense of normality that makes it easy to accept without question. But underneath that surface there is a shift. A shift that could pull your focus away from where it needs to be. A shift that could place you in a position where your clarity becomes clouded. And once clarity is clouded, decisions become harder to trust. That is what you are being protected from. Not just a situation, but the confusion that could come with it. Because confusion is one of the most powerful disruptions a person can experience. When you are confused, you hesitate. When you hesitate, you second guess. When you second guess, you delay. And when you delay, you often miss the moment where the right action could have been taken easily. This is how small misalignments turn into larger consequences. Not through force, but through gradual loss of clarity. And this is why awareness is your protection. Because when you are aware, you notice what others overlook. You feel what others dismiss. You recognize when something does not fully align, even if you cannot explain it immediately. And that recognition is enough to pause, to step back. You avoid moving forward until you are certain. That pause is protection in action. Right now, you are being given that ability before you need it. You are being told in advance that something requires your attention. That something may not be as simple as it appears. That something may try to draw you in without revealing its full impact. And once you know that, you move differently. You do not rush. You do not assume. You do not ignore what you feel. You stay present. You stay grounded. You stay aware of what is happening both around you and within you. Because what you are being protected from is not necessarily visible yet, but it will become visible if you step into it without awareness. That is the key. Awareness keeps you outside of what would otherwise pull you in. And this is where your role becomes clear. You are not being asked to avoid everything. You are being asked to discern, to recognize the difference between what aligns and what does not. You notice when something feels forced, rushed, or slightly off. You trust that feeling enough to pause instead of pushing forward. Because that is how protection works. It does not always remove the situation. Sometimes it simply gives you the awareness to avoid it. And right now, that awareness is being placed directly in front of you. You cannot say you did not feel it. You cannot say you were not given the chance to see it. You cannot say you were not guided toward a different way of moving. Because this moment is that guidance. And what you do with it determines whether protection remains active or whether you step into something that will require more effort to navigate later. This is not about fear. This is about clarity. And clarity, when used correctly, becomes your greatest form of protection. So as you move forward, remember this: you are not walking blindly. You are walking informed, and that alone changes everything. Type I am protected in the comments if you are choosing awareness over confusion. Blessing code 9090 is now surrounding your path with clarity and protection. There is something powerful you need to understand right now. This message is not only about warning, it is about positioning. Because whenever a warning is given and received correctly, it does more than protect you from what could go wrong. It places you directly in alignment with what can go right. And that is the part most people never see. They focus on what they are avoiding without realizing what they are stepping into. Because when you listen, when you stay aware, when you move with intention instead of reaction, something begins to shift in your favor. Not instantly in a dramatic way, but gradually in a way that becomes undeniable over time. Clarity replaces confusion. Calm replaces pressure. Direction replaces hesitation. And what once felt uncertain begins to feel steady. That is the shift. And it only happens when awareness is applied. Right now, you are being given the opportunity to move differently than you normally would. To pause where you would usually lie. To observe where you would usually assume. To step back where you would usually step in without thinking. These small adjustments create a completely different outcome. Because outcomes are not created by large moments alone. They are built through small decisions made at the right time. And this is one of those times. If you choose to stay aligned, if you choose to remain aware, if you choose to trust what you have been shown, you will begin to notice changes that others may not even recognize at first. Situations that could have become complicated will pass without affecting you. Conversations that could have led to confusion will not pull you in. Opportunities that look appealing on the surface, but carry hidden weight, will lose their hold on your attention. And instead, you will find yourself moving with a sense of quiet certainty. Not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because you are no longer moving blindly. You are moving with awareness. And awareness changes everything. Because when you are aware, you begin to see patterns more clearly. You begin to notice timing more precisely. You begin to understand when to act and when to wait. And that understanding leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to better outcomes. And better outcomes create a different path forward. This is the shift that follows obedience. Not immediate reward, but improved alignment. And alignment is what determines whether things flow or become difficult. Think about it this way. When you are out of alignment, everything feels forced. You have to push harder, think more, second-guess yourself, and constantly adjust because things do not feel stable. But when you are aligned, things move more naturally. Not effortlessly, but clearly. You know when something feels right. You know when something does not. You trust your decisions more. You move with confidence instead of hesitation. That is what is waiting on the other side of this moment. But it is not automatic. It depends on your response now. Because awareness without action does not create change. Knowing without adjusting does not create alignment. Fearing without applying does not create protection. You must move with what you have been given. You must allow it to influence how you think, how you respond, how you choose your next steps. And when you do, the shift begins. You may not notice it immediately in a dramatic way, but you will feel it. A sense of steadiness where there was once uncertainty. A sense of calm where there was once prayer. A sense of clarity where there was once confusion. And over time, that feeling becomes confirmation. Confirmation that you listened. Confirmation that you acted. Confirmation that you moved in alignment when it mattered. This is why this moment is important. Because it is not just about avoiding something negative. It is about stepping into something better. A clearer path. A more stable direction. a way of moving that prevents unnecessary complications before they even begin. And that is what true protection looks like. Not constant struggle, but smooth navigation. Not reacting to problems, but avoiding them through awareness. That is what becomes available to you when you listen, when you stay present, when you choose to act on what you have been shown. So as you move forward, remember this: you are not just being warned, you are being positioned. And what you do with that position will determine the path that unfolds next. Type "I receive the shift" in the comments if you are ready to move in alignment. Blessing code 1010 is now activating clarity, direction, and protection in your life. There comes a moment when the message is no longer subtle, when the whisper becomes a call, when the nudge becomes undeniable. And this is that moment. You have been guided, warned, positioned, and made aware. You have been shown the signs, the patterns, the shifts happening both around you and within you. And now, what remains is not more explanation but decision. Because this is where everything becomes clear. This is not just another message you can set aside. This is not something you can casually acknowledge and return to later. This is a final attempt to reach you before a moment arrives that will not wait for your readiness. You must feel the weight of that, not as fear but as truth. Because there are times in life when everything slows down just long enough for you to recognize what is happening, and then it moves forward, whether you are prepared or not. This is one of those times. And right now, you are being spoken to directly. Not vaguely, not generally, but personally. Because everything about this message has been building to this point where you can no longer say you were unaware. You can no longer say you did not feel it. You can no longer say you did not sense something shifting. You have felt it. You have noticed it. You have questioned it. And now, it is being confirmed. This is why this moment matters more than anything that came before it. Because this is where awareness becomes responsibility. This is where knowing becomes action. This is where the choice you make determines what happens next. You are not being asked to do something complicated. You are not being asked to change everything at once. You are being asked to pay attention, to stay present, to move with intention instead of assumption, to trust what has been revealed to you instead of ignoring it. That is all. But that all is everything. Because the smallest shift in awareness can prevent the largest mistake in direction. The smallest pause can stop the biggest misstep. The smallest act of obedience can change the outcome of an entire situation. And that is why this is being presented to you now before anything unfolds. Because once it unfolds, everything becomes faster. Choices become immediate. Reactions become automatic. And the space to pause becomes smaller. Right now, you still have that space. Right now, you still have the ability to step back, to observe, to align yourself with what you have been shown. But that space will not remain open forever. That is why this feels urgent. That is why this feels direct. That is why this feels like it is speaking straight to you. Because it is. This is not about convincing you. This is about reminding you of what you already felt, reminding you of what you already sensed, reminding you that you were not imagining the shift. You were recognizing it. And now, you are being asked one simple question: will you act on it? Will you take what you have been shown and move differently? Will you stay aware when everything around you tries to return to normal? Will you pause when something feels off instead of pushing forward? Because that is the difference. That is what determines whether this moment becomes protection or becomes regret. And you are not being left without a choice. You are being given one clearly. Why here? right now, and choice to listen or to ignore, and choice to align or to delay, and choice to step into awareness or to return to distraction. And that choice carries more weight than you realize. Because once the moment passes, the opportunity to prepare with this level of clarity passes with it. And what remains is the result of the decision you made here. So do not rush past this. Do not treat this lightly. Do not convince yourself that this is something you can revisit later, because later may not carry the same clarity as now. This is the moment you were meant to hear this. This is the moment you were meant to recognize what is happening. This is the moment you were meant to decide how you will move forward. And that decision is yours. Type "I will not ignore this" in the comments if you are choosing to act on what you have been shown. Blessing code 1111 is now sealing this message into your awareness. This is where everything comes together. Not in theory, not in possibility, but in decision. Because after everything you have heard, everything you have felt, everything that has been revealed to you in these moments, there is only one thing left that truly matters. What you choose to do now. This is not about information anymore. It is about direction. Because every warning leads to a choice. Every moment of awareness leads to a response. And every response leads to an outcome that could have been different if the choice had been different. That is the weight of this moment. You are no longer standing in uncertainty. You are standing in clarity. You have been shown what to watch for. You have been reminded to trust what you feel. You have been guided to slow down, to observe, to move with intention instead of reaction. You have been given the awareness that most people do not receive until it is too late. And now you must decide what that awareness is worth to you. Because it only has value if it is used. You can walk away from this and return to your normal patterns. You can treat this like something temporary, something interesting, something that felt intense in the moment but fades as time moves on. You can choose distraction over awareness, comfort over clarity, familiarity over intention. That is one path, and it is the path most people take. Not because they want to ignore truth, but because it is easier to return to what feels normal than to stay present with what requires change. But there is another path. A path where you take this seriously. A path where you move differently, even in small ways. Where you pause when something feels off. Where you pay attention to details you would normally overlook. Where you trust your discernment instead of dismissing it. A path where you remain aware even when everything around you tries to pull you back into distraction. That is the path of alignment. And alignment is what changes outcomes. Because when you are aligned, you are not just reacting to life. You are moving with it. You are stepping into moments prepared instead of surprised. You are navigating situations with clarity instead of confusion. You are avoiding complications before they even begin. And that is what this entire message has been leading you toward. Not fear, not pressure, but alignment. Because alignment is protection. Alignment is clarity. Alignment is what allows you to move through what is coming without being caught in it. And this is where your decision becomes final. Not final forever, but final for this moment. Because this moment will not repeat itself in the same way. You will not receive this exact clarity again at the exact same time. You will not stand in this exact position of awareness again before what is coming begins to unfold. This is your moment. And what you do with it will shape what happens next. So take a breath. Be still for a second. And ask yourself honestly, will you carry this awareness forward? Or will you leave it behind? Because the answer to that question is already forming in your actions. In how you move after this. In how you respond to what you feel. In whether you choose awareness or return to distraction. and that choice is happening right now. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. This is where everything changes. Not because something external suddenly shifts, but because you decide to move differently. And when you move differently, everything that follows begins to change as well. So do not underestimate this moment. Do not rush past it. Do not treat it lightly. Because this is not just the end of a message. This is the beginning of a different way of moving through what is about to unfold. And that begins with one simple decision. Right here. Right now. Type "I choose alignment" in the comments if you are ready to move with awareness and clarity. Blessing code 1212 is now sealing your decision and activating protection over your path. As this message settles into your spirit, understand this truth. What you just received is not just for you. It is a light meant to reach others standing at the edge of their own decision. Scripture declares that when seeds are sown in faith, they return as harvest. And right now, you are holding a seed that can awaken someone before their moment passes. I feel this strongly. When you act, you are not supporting a channel. You are opening a pathway for God's voice to reach someone who is still unaware. The PayPal link in the description and the QR code on your screen are not placed randomly. They are your invitation to participate in something eternal. As you give, you align yourself with the flow of provision, and what you release becomes a river that returns multiplied into your life. Do not hesitate in this moment. Act with intention. Sow into this mission now, and watch how heaven responds to your obedience.